Welcome back, everyone. So, since a few of you have clambered for a bit of a Q&A regarding this lovely little plot of ours, we're back. And I want to say thank you to my lovely cast for all of their hard work and dedication to this story. Moxiepox for playing Velda, Macabre Derek for playing Urian, and Lethality Complex for playing Amber.
You are most welcome.
I love you, Coffee.
We love you too. And for the brief moment that Spectre was with us for playing Benji and Wolf. And McFluffy Muffin, if you're out there, for playing M for the brief part that you did.
And I mean, Derek for playing John, and Nicholas for playing Violet.
Yes, such a wonderful slew of casts that I've had in this game. My first Chronicle completed. So,
There you go.
there we go.
Proud moment.
Proud moment. Yes, I'm a very proud storyteller right now for having completed my first Chronicle. And I hope that everybody's been enjoying the ride, because it's been a ride.
Oh,
It
yeah,
has been a
it's
good ride.
It's been a ride. I love it.
So I'm also opening up this Q&A to the cast as well, if you want to ask me some questions that won't spoil Aftermath. And there's also Spectre and Black Wolf. You guys are welcome to throw any questions that you want into the chat. And, you know, whoever else might be lurking out there in Twitch land.
I see that there is a Maddie and a Davy Jones show and an Uncivil Alpha.
Yes. If there's something that confused you maybe about a VOD or something that you want explained a little further, of course we have the little things in the on the side there for some of the information that we have about the different people and places of this story. But what all do you want to know?
Yeah, what do I want to know? There are so many questions that I could ask, and now it's just a matter of deciding which one I want to ask first.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say, I'm so glad I ended up joining this game.
I'm glad you did too. Such good.
like it was kind of rough getting Velda involved in the coterie to begin with. But I'm so glad that I stuck with it.
I'm glad you did too.
Because it just turned into such an amazing story.
Oh yeah.
And I love playing with you guys.
Best moments and worst moments for the characters from Spectre.
Yes, from Spectre to Spectre.
So, I'll take a crack at this first. The best moment that didn't end up being exceptionally bittersweet gotta be when Belder and Amber took down John. When they tore John, they used their wits and their tongues to tear John to pieces after he had betrayed them. Worst moments. I suppose I had some issue with some things that I was attempting to do, which didn't come off very well, and it kind of just seemed like Amber ended up bumbling about to the point where everyone's like, "Is she gonna do anything?" But that was more my bad. Just because I kind of bit off a little more than I chew with Amber. I wouldn't change the experience for the world, but I bit off a little more than I could chew. And I learned that the hard way. But hey, experience is experience.
It's true. That's true.
But if we're gonna talk about bittersweet moments,
The
last
bittersweet ones are
session,
good too, though.
last session, not the
Ooh.
sub finale, the session before. Yeah, so I killed my own touchstone and destroyed my car.
Mm.
Guys, he saw a Nissan Skyline in the
The next
parking
day.
lot
The
Oh,
next day, and I
the
was
next
like, my
day,
baby.
and he just cried.
that's so funny. That's so funny. How about you, Mox?
For me, I had so many moments in this game that I just love so much. Like there were so many interactions with Velda and John that I really enjoyed. Same thing with Velda and Violet. There was a lot of cattiness between Velda and Violet.
Oh yeah, even initially.
Oh, so much.
It was so good though. It was fun to watch.
And with Velda and Urien as well, like Urien left such a big impact on Velda, both negative and positive. And I kind of love that. As for worst moments, like there's a lot of stuff that if I could go back and like rewrite it, I would. But yeah, I loved it. Even the bad stuff, I loved it.
What about you, Derek?
Best moments, worst moments. Best moment had to be the first meeting of the three barons.
Oh, the
That was
Galaxy
such-
Brain play.
That was such
Getting
a
rid of
good show.
Raphael.
That was.
So for those of you who didn't know about that, long story short, if you're just kind of tuning in a little late, the one thing you might notice in your early Urien plays, Urien is built as an information powerhouse. He just knows things. He's very well researched. A lot of his time is built into just knowing things, especially in the political sphere. Which would make sense given the fact that he was a prince before he was diablerized by Urien Doyle. So, when that happened, and this comes down to the core of what Urien is. Urien is designed as a character who is not meant to be good at anything other than politics. The rest of it is how well can he influence the board and how well can he position his coterie members.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he feeds, that's how he stays safe. So when he specifically made sure that the one baron he's been picking on this entire time shows up unannounced to a meeting that's happening between the other two, being baited to actually show up because he would have rejected the invitation if it was given. The fact that it wasn't was an insult enough to make him come. But not only that, I managed to get him to sign off on the death of one of his own lieutenants by putting together all these other plots that happened and flat out accusing him of being a spy for the Camarilla and making it very clear, or giving the enemy Baron Jameson in this case, the option. You can either agree with us and realize that, okay, we need to get rid of this spy in our midst, or you have to agree that you have either been ignorant or complacent, and you can't afford to lose face in front of the other two barons because they will pick you to pieces. Weakness cannot be abandoned. So, in doing so, that one individual, Rascal, was being placed up on a silver platter, who was Benji's main rival. So in doing so, we lessened his position, built a reputation for Benji, was able to solidify my own position in amongst the court, and it was just one of these things where if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't see all these separate pieces that didn't seem connected, but Urien connected them all. And it was all laid out on the table, and wasn't until Urian started his speech did people really start getting onto it. And I think it was Lethality, who plays Amber, was just going,
Mm.
it happened.
Mm.
Right?
Mm. Worst moment?
Worst moment. The absolute worst. Ironically, a lot of people love this scene. I absolutely hated it.
Mm.
And that was when Urian had to take out Benji.
Oh, that was hard. That was
Oh,
absolutely hard.
That was hard. The biggest reason is because I was very invested into Benji as a character,
Yeah,
and being this stern,
like fatherly type, punishing his
yeah,
child.
it's like I can't go soft on him.
Can't
And
not punish your children, yeah.
he cost us Herd.
Mm.
Like, bluntly, that's what happened.
Yep.
He cost us Herd, offered a potential masquerade breach, and brought the cops on our door. It had to be settled.
Yeah.
And it had to be made freaking clear.
Yeah.
But I'm not about to take on Benji in a one-on-one fist fight, so it had to be outmaneuvering. And the first thing it was is, okay, I'm gonna wrap this car around a tree and put him right through the goddamn windshield.
Yep. That was kind of a fun scene to play. But it was
scene to play,
so
but I didn't
hard.
like it because it was one of those cases where I didn't want to do that to Benji, and ultimately it's one hell of a setback because Benji for the longest time was the big bruiser,
Yeah.
the one that we needed. Here's the thing most people don't get about muscle characters, okay? Muscle characters feel like they don't do much in a vampire game until shit hits fan.
Yeah.
But fact of the matter is the physical character's very presence is a piece on the board to be considered at all times.
Yeah.
And Urian specifically removed his only true physical threat off the board by doing so. And that was tough. That put us in a horrible spot. And so I'm panicking trying to come up with ways, and if it wasn't for the embrace of Carlos and having a life debt owed to me by Alfonso, we would have never recovered.
Right.
I'm pretty sure we would have been ended right then and there because what do? I either hinder us in this regard or things start to pile up even further, and sometimes you just need to end up putting a stopper on it right then and there.
Yeah.
So that was rough. That was very rough. Another scene of note, though, I really loved was Doc and her embrace.
I loved that too. Like the music going on in the background here is the sound that, like, iconically is what I used for that. Even though it was kind of like cycling through a bunch of things, but this is the one I remember the most. And so, I'm the kind of person who likes their vibes in all sorts of things, in all sorts of ways. And so music and ambience really plays a big part in getting me in the mood for specific scenes. Probably my favorite scenes to do as the storyteller were, I mean, anything regarding M, because she's a sweetheart, and a sweetheart monster, but a sweetheart. And so it was very easy, after having played a scene as Madame, kind of showing her desperation to Violet, in then going back to Urian and M is just crying, scared, because she thinks that Hugh is going to find her. And those scenes where I'm in that moment, and even just now, having done Velda's vignette, M just makes me cry. M just makes me cry when she thinks about the things that are important to her. And so I just love that character so much. And
That character is a fiend.
another of my favorite NPCs to play, I'm not gonna lie, is Benji. It's just so fun to be this kind of dopey guy who's just like, I don't give a fuck to just about everybody in the scene. And so, and it, like, those characters were very, very, like, important to me as a storyteller.
Benji getting exceptionally flustered by Amber's flirtatious advances.
Oh yes.
I just loved when Velda turned around to ask Benji, like, his opinion. He's just like, why the fuck are you asking me? Because that happened a number of times where Velda's like, give me your opinion, Benji. And he's like,
Why?
I have an opinion.
Why are you asking me these things?
Mm-hmm.
You're asking me to think.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
And then
But going off of that M thing as well, that scene that you were talking about where after Madame and then Urian and M, I think it was there. But there was a scene that followed up from that where Velda, Urian, and Violet had a conversation. I think Amber was involved in it too, where they had a conversation in the meeting house, and Velda kept poking at Urian like, you need to make us aware of exactly what the frig is going on now, because we're all walking into the middle of danger, and Urian just turned around and threatened to eat her.
He was hangry in that moment.
He was very hangry.
Urian has had a couple of hangry moments. We love to see it.
It was
We love
so
to see
good.
it. I know that there's another question from Black Wolf in the chat somewhere. I'm getting to it. Black Wolf asks, "What was the coterie house warded against specifically? If anything specific beyond ghosts, I may have missed that." Yeah, that's from early in the campaign where the one of the characters, the player who created M, McFluffy Muffin, ended up donating in coterie creation their haven, which also had awarded benefit on it. And so in creating that house, it was warded against ghosts specifically. And even though the coterie moved away from that house as a place of rest, that ward is still on that house, because that's a permanent ward that Clovis had placed on it as a form of payment to the to Urian, probably specifically, for taking on M and Wolf as charges at the very beginning of the campaign. And so that's where that comes from. It was part of coterie creation, and it just kind of turned into a thing from there. And then the house just turns into an iconic piece of the whole campaign, because a lot of important scenes take place there.
yes.
So
See, if we're talking Urian, I have to point a thing out.
Uh-oh.
The dad jokes.
Oh my god, yes.
Yes. Yes.
The first time Amber stuffed his stigmata and he's kept a check on her, he's like, oh, by God, there is blood everywhere.
Inspector, I'm so glad that you appreciate my Benji play. The way that I played Benji.
Or finding out what Harry Potter is for the first time.
Ah,
or
yes,
how
because
to
Carlos
use the
brought that
word
up.
yeet. Yes, or how to use the word yeet in a sentence.
Or asking questions about what is IKEA.
Or what is IKEA and how may I use it to my advantage?
Ah, yes.
that actually, just as a little behind the scenes for everyone, that actually prompted us to look up where the closest IKEA to San Antonio was.
I think there's an IKEA outlet store somewhere on the outside of the city.
I
There
find it
is.
funny
Uh-huh.
because Urian can't turn it off.
Nope,
Right?
you can't.
Yeah.
And
Even when
it's
it seems
delightful.
like we're just, what did you pick up from IKEA? What is this IKEA? How may this be sweet?
What is IKEA and what does it do?
Yes.
Uh,
Furniture, Urian.
no,
Furniture.
the best part, because here's the thing, Urian's out of touch, but he's not so far that he can't do things. It's just that if of all the characters in San Antonio,
Mm,
he's the one that doesn't play with the masquerade in the slightest. Like,
No,
he
not at
won't
all.
even chance it. And if
No.
it's going to be chanced, he goes in with brutal urgency.
he's cautious.
Yeah.
Uber
And-
cautious.
This is where I think it throws Amber and Velda off, especially when they first meet him, on this idea that Urian doesn't use a cell phone. In fact, he uses a payphone that he's basically paying a convenience store to keep there.
Yeah.
It should be decommissioned. Everybody's decommissioning them now, but no, he pays them to say, keep that phone there operating at all times.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's one of these things where, because of the nature of the masquerade, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom, Brisbane might be the exception, and that's tonally for Brisbane, right? But
Mhm.
but I absolutely love when Urian ends up doing this and showing all these old ways of communicating, of being able to spread a message, of explaining that even just moving a potted plant onto a windowsill is a sign.
Right.
This is how he knows how to communicate.
Right. 'Cause he's
Um,
been doing it for centuries.
yeah, but I absolutely love like those little tidbits, and I find it funny you guys call them dad jokes, when in reality it's just having fun with like little things that
That he's just not.
Urian's out of touch.
He's out
Like,
of touch.
it's not something he talks about. The idea, what does he eat, right?
Galvin's even more out of touch. He is the
Oh, yeah.
worst. He is the worst.
But he's never had to adapt.
He's never
Right.
had to. No.
Whereas, yeah, it's old school spycraft. You're absolutely right. Yeah, Black Wolf.
Oh yeah.
Let's see
And,
here. How would you have played your characters differently, and or would you have set up a different ambition for your character? Ooh, that's a good one. You guys want to take this
What
one
was the
first?
question?
How would
What's the
you have
question?
played your character differently, and or would you have set up a different ambition for your character?
I could think of an answer off the top of my head immediately, in that I kind of got a bit loose with Amber's discipline use towards the end, but I was playing her very, very conservatively compared to, like, I will say Amber
Compared to other Toryard in the city, let's be real.
it is quite a long ways away from the first concept I had in mind. Like, like as I was talking to you, Coffee, she's very different to the concept I had in mind. And
Yeah.
when she was, and then even from that envisionment to now, yeah, I would change. She'd be a lot heavier on the discipline use. And yeah, I probably would have a different ambition.
Because sadly, Amber is the only one who really didn't gain their ambition at the end of the story.
No, but then again, there's also the year time skip and the fact that there's a massive void that is just waiting to be filled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
something that we've set up in the epilogues now. So
Yeah, so that's a thing.
It's not
But
the
no, I
success,
probably-
it's the journey.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
true.
not the
That's
success,
exactly
it's the
right.
journey.
That's true.
And she completed the journey. She didn't reach the destination, but she completed the journey.
Nice.
But no, I would say I probably would have set up a different ambition. I was actually thinking of changing my ambition partway through, but then I figured, no, I'm gonna stick with it and see what happens. And I'm glad that I
Right.
did.
Right.
The
Well,
journey
lessons
wouldn't have turned
learned.
out as it did.
Well, lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
What about Velda?
I probably wouldn't have changed her ambition, but I think there are some moments that I probably would have gone back and played differently. Like, she's always been a very prickly character. Like, Velda was actually not created specifically for San Antonio. She's actually a character that I had from another game that I ported over because I really like her character. But there are some moments in San Antonio where I probably would have played her as a little bit less prickly and a little bit more emotional. Because there are a lot of times where she comes off across colder than she really should.
That's a fine line.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a very fine line. But outside of that, like I said, I really love this character. I probably wouldn't change her much.
And she's a fledgling in the story of San
Yeah.
Antonio, and so she's learning. She starts off as very cold and distant because she doesn't want to get close to anybody, but she, at the end, allowed herself to get close and feel close to the coterie members.
Velda, it wasn't really played out in the story, but Velda actually has a lot of trauma that she's still dealing with because she's so
Lots
young.
of trauma.
Yeah.
Which actually does play a part in her being so distant.
I would say with Urian, I like how he played out, but that was specifically because he was built with a purpose.
Yeah.
You have to remember, at the start of this game, it initially was 3 players who've never touched Vampire the Masquerade before, and 1 player who's been playing it for years.
Oh, it was 2.
With
2 and 1.
or I think we got up to 3 at one point, weren't we?
Well, me as a storyteller having not done a story
fair
before, so there's that.
But the idea is how do you build a character who has the knowledge that I do, because I could feign not knowing things or not putting things together for a bit, but when you hear something, you're like, I know the answer to this and can't bring it to light, it's frustrating. And the other players are constantly trying to learn of the game literally by playing it.
Right.
So why not play the mentor character? So that's Urian worked out surprisingly well in there. The idea of social climbing and, showing like, okay, when you're playing political power and all this is something you can do. And so Urian was fantastic for that. I wouldn't change his ambition, but there is one thing I would like to change. And it would have been his approach. Because what I feel like he should have always been, or he did one scene that I wish I could have replicated more often. It was when Amber was trying to feed and couldn't for the love of her make the rolls. So Urian just goes in, uses Dominate, uses a few tricks, and brings over some food, and she's kind of looking like, how the hell do you make it look that easy? When he's bringing her food that he legitimately can't feed on. He can't feed on a mortal without killing them.
Right.
So I feel like I should have slowed it down a bit and focused more on the development of the charges. But then things started spiraling out of control, and it was my own fault for letting that happen. So that would have been how I would have changed things.
I'm just a storyteller. This is your story.
So, Shadow asks us a what if.
I think there's a question before that.
How would you play your character differently, and then Shadow's question, and then Black Wolf asked another question after
Oh,
that.
yeah, you're right.
Shadow asks, if we were to play a Sabbat game, what clans would we go with and why?
Well, my obvious answer is Zemitzi.
I mean, that's the obvious answer, but you're playing it in an NR game. Spoilers.
Yeah, well, you wanna know what? I can do either way. Honestly, what I want to play in a Sabbat game is a Toreador.
Ooh. Sabbat Toreador sounds fun.
Toreador, like, without any scruples, starts to change what kind of art you can make, and they are some of the most vicious kindred you will ever meet.
Yeah.
Sabbat game.
What would I play in a Sabbat game? Now, there are a few concepts that I think would fit really well into a Sabbat game. Something along the lines of. I think I would probably go along with Derek. Definitely, Toreador would probably, in a Sabbat context, would probably be something I'd very much like to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way that I'd go with it specifically is I would probably specifically be looking for targets to have said concept develop vicissitude. And the reason I say that is because I would probably want to explore I suppose the concept that I have in mind is a true artist of flesh. Probably started with things like tattooing and then moved on into literally turning people into art. First by mundane means, such as plastination and, dismemberment plastination and putting them back together like dolls. And then further into supernaturally. Because what is more beautiful than living, breathing art? Interactive art that you can touch, that you could see, that you could taste if you were so inclined to do so.
Lethality, get your hands off the scalpel.
What about you, Mox?
So, I think if I was to play a Sabbat game, I might actually try something more along the lines of maybe a Malkavian. Or go with your typical Bruiser, Gangrel, or Bruja. I just think there'd be interesting concepts to play out. I'm actually not as familiar with the Sabbat as everybody else here are, so
I mean, same.
that would
But
be
that's
very
just me.
much a learning curve for me.
I think as a storyteller, I would want more information on on the Sabbat in general in order to even run a Sabbat game. And so it would definitely be very spiritual because from what I understand of the Sabbat, they're very ritualistic in their indoctrination. And so you kind of have to play it with a bit of a cult mindset in mind as the NPCs that would be your allies. And so
Honestly, the hardest part when it comes down to Sabbat will always be the fact that, well, first and foremost, I find that the books tell you a lot of things they can do, but don't really tell you much
about what they do. Yeah.
Outside of, you're a monster, act like it. Stop pretending you're a human being. You're not. They're cattle. But
Right,
honestly,
right.
play an older Camarilla, and they're thinking pretty much the same thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be learned for a Sabat game, and this is one of the. I'm just gonna go on a small rant here, but one of the hardest parts about a Sabat game, all honesty, is how do you keep building a Sabat game without making them the antagonists?
Right.
I know that you're the bad guys from the Camarilla and some of the Anarchs' perspective, but for the
Right.
most part, why should we care about these characters?
Right.
When openly it's just like, who can do the worst thing possible?
Right. Right.
Trust me, that's not a game of chicken you want to play.
And it's also, I think it would also be very hard to set a Sabat game in North America, simply because of how few there are in North America anymore. And so, if you did set one in North America, they'd be very migratory, and so you'd be jumping from city to city based on what arc you're playing or whatever. And so it would be even harder on the storyteller to be able to create chronicles that have to do with such maybe short plots in some cases, depending on what it is that you do. Because
Well, that
a
was
single
the question.
pack, a single
Shoot.
pack might not be that threatening, like a pack of 4 or
I mean,
5.
I could think of, well, if we're talking that, I think if I remember correctly, there is a single place it's technically in North America, but a single place where you could set them. I think maybe 2 if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, if I were to
Yeah.
turn San Antonio into a Sabat game, it would be rebuilding the whole goddamn city from scratch. So,
well, no.
Well, I was thinking.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking more. If I remember correctly, don't the Sabat still hold Montreal and Mexico City?
To my understanding, not Mexico City anymore, and Montreal is contested. Like when they left, a large portion of them left. So the few Sabat that have remained are either ones that kind of missed out their opportunity, or were never invited or had the logistics to make it across the ocean.
right. The ones that got left behind.
Yeah.
And so you have your individual packs who have basically supplanted themselves into whatever Anarch movement will take them, based on the simple fact that, no Gamorilla's going to have them. They'd rather hunt their heads.
Well, I suppose that actually brings an idea for a Sabat game to mind. If Montreal is contested, the Camarilla wants it, the Anarchs want it. There's a non-zero, much higher than other
Number of
places at the
Sabat.
very least, number of Sabat.
Mm-mm.
What if you wanted to run a game about being the cancer in that system? Sure, on the outside, you're Anarch. We support the Anarch movement all the way. But you're the cancer in that movement. You're biding your time and setting things up to subvert the movement to your own ends.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be a game where you guys actually, win or be heroes in any sense.
No.
You'd be playing it from the outset that, yes, you are, in all fairness, the antagonists. But I think it'd be an interesting thing to do, that at the end of such a chronicle.
How do you become the protagonist of your own story in that case, though? How do you become?
Yeah.
And that's where the real rub really comes from, because that's our job as as storytellers with the NPCs and with players as the player characters. You kind of need to make your other players and your ST care about what the characters are about and what the direction of the story is going.
All a protagonist is the leading character or one of the major characters in it, or an advocate of champion of a particular cause or idea. It doesn't. You'd be the protagonist of your own story. It's just your own story as far as everyone else is concerned.
Oh yeah, you're the villains.
Yeah.
But the
You're the
hard
vil-
part is how do you make people care?
How do you
right?
make people
That's
care
the
about
hard
it?
part.
Yeah.
Is
How do you make your storyteller
for
care?
terrible sake is like,
Yeah. How do you
Okay.
make your storyteller care, for one? How do you make your other players care, for two? And how do you make your audience, if you're on Twitch, care as well?
also how do you get away with doing Sabat things as an audience on Twitch without a lot of censorship?
A lot of self-censoring
Yeah,
would
that's
go
the
on.
question.
The terms of service do tell us that we need to steer clear of abject, horrific acts of violence in a depicted manner. And, you can only gloss over having killed hundreds of people
Well,
in just that kind of a sentence so many times.
Yeah, my thought to as far as like making the people care
Mm-hmm.
is you'd make it a story of reclamation more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, Montreal had pretty much always been a spot city.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The world, like everything has changed. The world has changed. And now you're finding, any Sabat really worth their salt as you said, Derek, crossed over and went to fight in the end times of Gehenna.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at the displaced people who their own sect probably doesn't really want them anymore.
Well,
Anyone who they truly wanted either left or basically got to a point where they got stuck, couldn't leave.
Mm. And I suppose that would make for somewhat of an interesting story.
Yeah, you'd be stepping into the shoes of a group of people who believe that Montreal is their city,
Mm-hmm.
with two opposing sides going at it in the city.
Mm-hmm.
With no thought of what was theirs.
Right.
So it would be a story of claiming what they believe to be rightfully theirs from from two different sects who really couldn't give a shit about them as them.
Mm-hmm. To move on to other questions, Black Wolf has asked, were there any really shocking moments your players pulled off that you weren't expecting? I wasn't necessarily expecting Rascal to die. Let's be real. I wasn't exactly expecting that, because that was fairly early, or like halfway through season 1. And so I wasn't really expecting that kind of big brain play. And it was a bit of a shocker for me because Rascal, and this is, kind of me as a player, was being very reactionary to the accusations. He was being very very flippant with the way that he was wording things. That kind of solidified his fate in that, once Urian really got the ball rolling and started monologuing about how Rascal is a fucking traitor. And it kind of took me off guard, which I imagine was exactly Rascal's reaction. And when Jameson essentially said, you know what, go for it, he was in the mind to flee. And that's exactly what he tried to do. And
Benji
caught him. And Rascal was never that much of a muscle man. He was more of a manipulator. And so...
I suppose that's a question that we could levy at you, Coffee, now that all is said and done.
Yes.
Was he?
Also, there are plenty of times that that I have kind of gone with my players' ideas as to what's happening. Not gonna really, not really gonna divulge a whole lot of that, but there are
Hey, it's
moments.
one of my best weapons
Exactly.
as an ST. It's like,
Exactly.
This just sounds like a better
This
idea
sounds like
than
a
what I
better
had.
idea than what I
Let's go.
had. Let's go with it. Rascal was not Camarilla.
Oh.
Rascal was not Camarilla.
Well, fact
I know
of the
there's
matter
also
is,
been a
I didn't
lot
really
of.
care.
Yeah.
I know there's
Tyrion-
also been a lot of suspicion towards Jameson perhaps being Cammy as well.
Well, it's not really that much of a spoiler for Aftermath, so no, he's not involved with the Camarilla at all. He's a descendant of
Yeah.
Tyler. He would be a shame to his line if he was.
If the Brewhog gave a shit about that kind of
That's
thing.
if the Brewhog gave a shit about that, but Jameson's kind of one of the rare few that kind of looks at his ancestors' legacy and kind of really takes that to heart and thinks that, you know, bowing down to one's elders as servants instead of equals is ludicrous. Everyone's opinion matters. It's just a matter of, can you do something about it rather than, you know, complain about it. If you do something about it, you're worth your salt. And so that's kind of Jameson's point of view in regards to, you know, the Anarch movement and things, because, you know, he kind of does have a name to live up to. Whether he really believes that as much as Ventrue does, probably not. But it is still something that people either suspect or know about him. And thus, you know, he doesn't make waves, he just settles them.
Oh, Blue Cloud, just to end up letting you know, this is a wide open AMA right now.
Yeah. If you have any
so-
questions about San Antonio, please feel free to pop them in. If there's anything that's going to spoil an Aftermath, then you know, I'm probably going to leave it a little vague, but there really isn't
Ask
much
us
to
anything.
spoil just yet.
Yeah. AMA doesn't mean we have to answer everything. It just
No,
means
just ask.
so long as it's
Ask me.
applies
Ask me
to
what you
Twitch's
want.
turn.
Ask me what you want.
I have to ask.
Yes.
I have to ask, who was it that actually ended Delgado?
Who ended Delgado?
Mhm.
Yeah, who was it that actually ended Delgado?
I have my guess.
It's Galvin.
Really?
Yep.
Galvin
No,
did it
I think that'd be the case.
at Kyle's behest.
Yeah, he was the
Nice.
he was the only one to me that felt like he had enough sneak in him
To get away with
to
it.
get by everyone, to get away with it.
See,
Yeah.
I always actually thought that it was John who had actually gone out of his way to do it, because he had that call out right before it happened, basically, that pulled him away from the group,
And
and I was like,
and I'll let you know, since it's kind of, it's a little bit of a spoiler for like half of season 2, but the Derek and I were like commenting to each other, like asking like things. I was asking him a lot of things back and forth about what it is that John was up to in private message because of John's affiliation, as well as what Kyle would do in certain instances, because I'm not exactly a big brain player, and so I almost feel like you can tell where Derek's influence kind of stops in the midst of the story, because I'm like losing my mind figuring out, okay, so how exactly do I do this as Kyle Calhoun without him being like an extremely, like, because he is a neonate, without him being extremely showing his age in I wanted to play him wiser than his years. And
Well, the other thing is it's not just, and this was the biggest danger with Kyle.
yeah,
Kyle himself on his own is not the danger.
no,
It's who he's associated with,
yeah,
who's around him, right?
Yeah.
And so this was one of the things. Obviously, Urian would know this as the fact they have a blood relation. Urian doesn't let that shit go,
Right.
but that's also the reason why it's like the focus is not taking him out. The focus is on taking out all of his supports until it's like, okay,
Until he
you're
has nothing to
going
stand
Neo
on
mode.
anymore. Yeah. Next
Interesting.
question.
Spectre. Yeah.
Spectre asks, what was
Spectre
the
is
hardest
asking-
parts of the game to coordinate at first, as a first ST? The biggest thing that was hardest to coordinate for me was who is doing what where. And so that's always been something that I need visual aids to really represent. And so I created myself, in order to keep track of all of these things, I created myself a GM's domain map, especially when the Camarilla started muscling in and started taking territory of their own. I had to draw out the map to be able to figure out, okay, who's where exactly, especially including in the Anarch domains, who was looking over what. And sometimes, like, positioning things in a physical sense to really kind of get an idea of who's doing what where. Another thing I did was I had to, for my own sanity, create all of the NPCs in the background, even if they were never seen. I had to actually have a list of people because of the simple fact of somebody's taking care of this place. Who is it? Do I need to have stats for them? Probably not. But they have to be there visually for me to be able to understand that this is someone in the world. Another thing that I did for the most part was mostly just a visual relationship map of every kindred in the city, including, past relationships in other cities. Like Jackson had a couple of important players, especially for the survivors. And who was coming to Kyle and his crew's aid, who ultimately got pulled because things in Dallas are getting heated. So visualizing without visual aids is hard for me. So I had to make them. I had to spend hours making things for this game. You have no idea. Just the list of just people in the city, including mortals that never got seen either.
I'm gonna take that idea.
What's that?
That idea of making those visual aids, I'm gonna do that for Rockhampton.
Because I'm a visual person, and so if I understand visually what the hierarchy is, visually where the domains lie, and visually who likes who and who hates who, then I can make up the rest on the fly. It doesn't matter. Just have to know who likes who and who doesn't, and know where they sit geographically. And that's what I need to know as a GM, as an ST. So, yeah, I've spent hours doing all of that shit.
It's appreciated.
Yes.
If you knew the amount of notes I had to take with Urian to try and keep all this shit straight.
Oh man, I wasn't even keeping half of my shit straight.
I have a notebook that is just full of notes just from the now 23 sessions that I was a part of.
Yep. For me, it was if I can look at my visual aids, then I know what's going on. because there's a visual reminder of who's doing what. I don't have to necessarily
How-
flesh it out, but who's doing what where and why.
How
Ish.
many was I a part of?
I think
forget how many
Derek did a
sessions.
breakdown of the number of plots in this story from in one of his workshops the other week, and Urian was tied into probably a good 15. Most of them minor
17
plots,
sessions.
like 15 different kinds of plots going on to this story.
Yeah.
Which is just fine. You guys nibbled at the ones you wanted to, so you did.
The idea is you give more than the players can handle, and it's like, okay, what's the most interesting? What's the story you want to tell? Right.
Right. And that's kind of the point. And so yeah, so like is there another question?
Shadow Gamer asked which ghost in San Antonio is your favorite, either one you've used or one you didn't have a chance to but wanted to.
As far as ghosts are concerned, the only ghosts that really had any significance in the story were the ghost of the person that Alfonso killed at the beginning of the game, and the ghost that Urian interacted with at the Alamo, which ultimately was kind of more of a history lesson from that particular entity to whoever would listen. The ghost that Alfonso ended up, the person that Alfonso killed and ended up creating a ghost for, that turned out to be more of playing into the mechanically into the security of the domain, of the sanctuary domain. And so while we didn't really explore much of the supernatural in that case, the hardest part of doing and introducing supernatural stuff is being able to really give it life. And I know that Urian, as a character, wanted to really explore the ley lines and what it is that he could use them to do versus the Camarilla, but it really just came down to the fact that I needed to flesh out what created them and why they were there before I could really determine what it was that they could be used for. And even now, out of character, Urian is spending a lot of time developing his knowledge based on De La Rosa's library that he opened up to him. And so Urian can only do so much on his own to study these things. He needed outside source because Marius was never much of an occultist. That was Jacques' shtick. That's why he had Jacques and Jackson to begin with.
Although, if we're talking ghosts, I think there was one created as part of the story.
Oh, Alexander.
Yes, there was actually a group.
Alexander.
I loved the ghost at Delgado's house after the fire.
Yep,
Just
Alexander.
that weaving it through to help us with the investigation was great.
Oh, yeah.
And then Urian setting them free.
Fun fact, Delgado's place was on top of a ley line.
Oh wow.
Like, way surface side of it. Like, it didn't really touch the surface nearly at all. It was still way underground, but that's the reason. That's the reason that a ghost was even there in the first place.
I can't. Okay.
Wow.
I actually never pieced that together. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was on top of this shit, but even I got surprised.
Yep. You didn't notice that they weren't anywhere else in the city? Except near the ley lines?
Implying there's also one under the mall.
Well, maybe a fractured one, but that was before I really came up with the ley line story. Let's see. Let's see if there's other questions.
The amount of thought with the ley lines.
Yeah, that Spectre Deflector actually helped me out a lot with, because they're into very witchy things, and so I needed a witchy's perspective.
That is.
I needed a witchy's perspective in order to be able to find
fair.
out what the supernatural implications of ley lines would be, and just kind of
Hello?
took it from there. Oh, hello.
Welcome back.
My internet died for a second there.
Let's see. Could you explore? Oh, explain the amount of thought with the ley lines. So with in terms of the ley lines, Spectre was really helping me out with that. In that there are sections of the ley lines that are vortexes and spit everything out and are void, and then there are sections that suck everything in that are like black holes, and figuring out where those are in the course of the story is, what you would get as far as what the benefits or what the uses of them are. And so it's really just to connect the dots rather than a line. And so, yeah, it's not really something that I thought of in depth until season 3. I knew that it was there. I knew that I wanted it to be a plot point, but I didn't know what to do with it. So it just kind of remained a little bit ambiguous, because I am terrible at thinking on the fly. I have to do so much planning in order to be able to even understand what's going on in my own goddamn city.
I love it. That's
glad
how
you
you know
guys
that
love
your
it.
city is basically alive.
I'm glad you guys love it. Like, it wasn't nearly this fleshed out when I first started the game. Let's be real, because I I did some very, very early ST weird moves, I think, in that shortly after Wolf and M have joined the coterie, the Baron pays them a visit, and so that was a bit of a weird move. But then it turned into, well, you need to go find Alfonso, because that was the first adversary for the coterie, and that turned into, well, who's Alfonso's sire? Well, it's Randy. And then that turned into, well, why does Delgado want to keep this kid alive, and why does it need to be a secret? Well, Randy doesn't want anybody to know, really, that he's the sire of a thin blood, and how much personal investment that Alfonso has from Randy, and kind of just spiraled from there. So it was very interesting. Now,
Well, you said you made a few missteps, right? So what do you figure the biggest misstep you've made in the Chronicle, and what did you take away from it? Because we all make mistakes. I mean, that's how we learn. So what do you figure your biggest? Oh, there we go. Yeah, this was a huge mistake. I pulled a dumb.
I pulled a dumb. What is my biggest dumb? What I feel is my biggest dumb is not really playing into. I think the biggest dumb that I did was not really tying Urian's touchstones into the story. Just because in my own head, geographically, they weren't anywhere near Sanctuary. So the likelihood of me dropping them in somewhere random was pretty slim in my own opinion, unless you actively went to go see them, and in which case Urian really didn't. And I think I could have pulled in more with them.
That was one of my big things that I ended up learning from that as well. So.
The probably the other big dumb that I did. I mean, aside from like not including touchstones, because I did that with Velda too. Is oh, what is my other big dumb? Now I'm brain farting.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. And that was the whole thing with Delgado was just an early ST move that seemed, big brain when it wasn't. It wasn't a big brain play by me at all. It was just a big dumb, and so it's a thing that happened. But it made for a good story, which makes it less of a big dumb, and just a okay, a baron doesn't necessarily need to go visit their people. That's fine.
I mean, that's fair enough. If so long as it turned into something interesting,
It did.
I couldn't really call it a big dumb because
Yeah.
it may not seem like the smartest thing at the time, but so long as something good comes of it, yeah.
Well, a lot of what was going on with that also is that Urian was voicing to Wolf and to M the implications of what that means, and thus explaining it to me as the ST as well. And so, really, it became this player is actually teaching the storyteller how to play the game.
Well, I was a part of it too.
Yeah.
Just to be honest, it was a case of you were trying to learn.
Trying to learn Vampire
And-
and what all of it really means as a game in that respect, and how to play a slightly higher politic game than I'm used to, because I was
Tougher
coming
than
from
it
Motor
looks,
City.
isn't it?
Yeah, I was coming from Motor City, where I was playing mouse as a kid on the ground in the wrong place at the wrong time all the time, and so it's been an interesting ride. The first like maybe 5 to 10 episodes of this Chronicle were rough. Ugh. They're rough to watch, but you get to about like episode 10, you're fine. You're fine just to keep going from there, because the rest of it's kind of like it's a little cringy, but that's how far we've come in the year and some that we've been doing this game. So
Yes.
So I acknowledge my cringe. I acknowledge that I am a better ST and will continue to develop as an ST in all of that. So
You've grown so much and you should be proud of yourself.
Yes.
This is why I was proud to be a part of this game.
Oh yeah.
Spectre is asking about Velda's background and story. You should send them a
Oh,
DM on Discord.
boy.
Oh yeah. That character has so much history.
Yeah. Velda has a lot. So the von Sventgauser Altenburg family actually is native to the Romanian region.
Mm-hmm.
And they are actually a noble family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why Velda had such high resources. When she was 16, she was kidnapped and held for ransom. She developed Stockholm Syndrome with her kidnapper, which carried on as she got older, leading to a few behavioral problems and whatnot, which then, as she started moving into her modeling career and everything, made things very, very interesting when she was interacting with her fans. She had a lot of stalkers and fans that were a little bit obsessive, and her sire was actually one of her best friends, who she'd been had been doing photography and stuff with and modeling for, basically doing beneficial boosts of both of their careers.
Asher loves you, by the way.
Yes.
Just as a side note, Asher
is
loves
beautiful. Velda loves Asher. And he actually found her after she had been attacked by a fan, and the fan was actually the cause of her death. And it was just in time that Asher got to her and turned her. So,
similar thing happened to Amber in regards to Ashley.
But yeah, Velda's had a couple of different iterations, and this is the most recent one. And I love her to pieces. I just love this game to pieces.
Yeah, me too. Does anyone have any
I'm gonna
questions
miss
about
this game.
specific characters that they want to know? Or specific places that they want to know? I didn't really get a chance to use Jacques all that much. He got mentioned, but I didn't get to use him all that much. Which is a real shame. But, yeah, there's a whole list of people out there. Anything that you as the players want to know?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm not sure. I'm kind of really interested about inter-party opinions, because like I know Velda thought Amber was an idiot for a while, and like Velda was very unsure of Urian to begin with, but eventually developed a kind of a soft spot for him. What did you guys think about, like, in terms of characters? What did your characters think about the other people that they ran in with in the coterie?
It's actually, for as simple as that question is, it's also very hard to answer.
I mean, you could start with the NPC members of the coterie, such as M, and Benji, and kind of start from the NPC angle versus the player character angle, because they're part of the sanctuary domain.
That is true. Honestly, Amber thought M was adorable. She was a bee that needed to be protected and just needed a goddamn hug.
Especially because her brother wanted to kill her.
So
Yeah.
I guess now would be a bad time to explain that M was built with 4 dots manipulation.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. You gotta, made it from New York all the way to San Antonio as Kindred. Had to lie her ass off to get through any kind of resistance she might have met.
Well, she had the help of her sire. So if there's a little bit of background that you don't know about M, is that her whole story was that she and her sire came from New York with the assistance from Clovis as a payback, since Clovis owed Joanna, and M sire's name being Joanna, and so Clovis helped Joanna get out of New York because Joanna had embraced M outside of tradition. And so they came to San Antonio. Joanna basically dropped M off in the lap of Clovis, and then Clovis introduced her to Urian. In that regard, then when M found out that her sire had been killed, that just strung a whole slew of emotions from that girl that she would be next.
Yeah.
And so yes, she's a very pure being, but she's also a very manipulative being if she had ever wanted to be surreptitious toward you.
Yeah, she very easily could.
She very easily could have if she wanted to. Um, and who knows, that might be her cover. You don't really know. Because
Yeah, she
that's
she goes
probably
back
the one
to,
NPC I wanted to
goes back
play
to
more.
New York with a pack of used ashes and goes, "Listen to me, I'm the captain now."
I think to answer Spectre's question a little bit, M was one of my favorite NPCs to play, without a doubt. Um, Ones that I wish that I could have played a little bit more probably would have been having a probably a bigger, broader conversation with Kyle. In that now he is a man without a lineage and is incredibly lost. And I think that me as a storyteller would have liked to have explored that a little bit more, but obviously, things didn't work out in that regard. But I love his concept, and he's an interesting one. Another of my favorites is Hugh. In the brief amount of time that we saw him, I feel like he really kind of made his own mark. In that he was kind of. I feel like he might have been a little fish milky, but not in like the kind of sense where it's like lol random. He had a purpose to it. He had a reasoning for it. Whether that's, a deranged reason or not, that's, Malkavian. But he had a reason for what he did.
Yeah.
And so, also playing Wolf. Wolf was interesting. He wasn't actually as close to Drogir as you thought. He was probably Humanity 4, but that's like as low as he was.
I would have thought Humanity 2, maybe even 1.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
He didn't go that far.
Before we move on, there's one individual I wish I had a better relationship with.
Uh-huh.
But I understand I was nom-nomming on their dearest for a long time because Fox's snack, but it's Gabriel Suarez.
Oh, yeah.
I love that thin blood.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
That little fucker has some bark on him.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This thin blood is trying to step up to one of the cities notorious, and it's one of those, I like you.
Yeah.
You're worth keeping around.
Thin Blood, who actually masqueraded as Nosferatu in Houston, Camarilla Houston, for a little while, and got found out that he's Thin Blood, got marked, and then somehow ended up in San Antonio.
Fair enough. So there was another question, actually. Were any of your characters in the Chronicle influenced by characters from elsewhere in popular entertainment?
In popular entertainment. Okay.
So I can't speak for anybody else, but Urian has 2. Urian. But technically, no. The accent is pretty obvious, but actually, the biggest one is if you've played BioShock. Think Fontaine of BioShock. Because actually, CoffeeCat, would you do me a favor and open up Urian's character sheet so people can read literally what I have written there from the lyric?
Yes.
I have this posted in almost every character I play, I either have a lyric or a phrase or something that just puts me in the mindset immediately. And Urian Doyle initially came in with the intent of taking San Antonio over. So, this is the story of Frank Fontaine from BioShock.
Yeah.
I started from the top, took a plunge to the bottom, waited until my name became long forgotten, remade myself amongst the paupers, dropped into their Sodom, this impoverished populace, back to the top I brought him. Taught him how to topple corruption, find you a lighter, ignite a revolution, you can fight fire with fire. Because why would I try and build an empire for myself when I could just take one away from someone else? That was Urian's game plan from the go. He
That
is
was his concept.
literally the vampiric version of Frank Fontaine from BioShock.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much.
I hope you appreciate that one. Yeah, Blue Cloud. But yeah, that is where that's where Urian Doyle comes from. So
Yeah.
if you've ever played BioShock, you actually know Urian better than you think you do. I will also note that entire plan has been executed.
Mm-hmm.
Velda's concept actually comes from the original Dracula. Initially, I was going to play, like, I did want to play her as a Tzimisce, but at that point the Tzimisce wasn't actually out and available.
Mm-hmm.
In V5.
So yeah, because I fell in love with the concept of the Tzimisce when I was reading some of the earlier versions, and yeah, it's cool. But yeah, so she actually came from the Dracula.
Nice.
Yeah.
Does Amber have any pop culture inspiration, or is she just a fairly unique to Lethality Complex kind of concept?
You could probably find some tropes and cliches that Amber kind of falls into, but as far as the playing off goes, I didn't really use any particular inspiration for her.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, that one didn't really end up coming off from any pop culture things majorly.
Mm-hmm.
Not like Urian and Velda. I mean, if
Fair
anything, if anything, BTM stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Fair enough.
really the extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything else otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Did we get any other questions? Because I don't see any.
Yeah. Not any so far.
Feel free to end up shooting some more, ladies and gentlemen. But I will end up asking a question, actually.
Sure.
Okay. Actually, it comes down to is, my whole role in this initially was a mentor figure in character, so I'll ask on an out-of-character level. I got a bit of an answer from Lethality, but I'm kind of curious about Moxie playing Velda. Did you guys learn anything or take anything away from this that you would implement in your own games, or maybe just when you've been playing this?
Oh, absolutely.
And what are they?
Yes. It's hard for me to formulate exactly what it was, but I feel like I've taken a lot of this experience and I will continue to implement it in future games. Like, it wasn't just one thing. Like, There's a lot in terms of the roleplay aspect. There's a lot in terms of basic character interaction and politics, and just in general, there's a lot of influence from everyone in this game that I've learnt from, and I intend to use going forward.
Oh yeah, I absolutely intend to take everything that I've learned as with this being my first Chronicle and being a very successful Chronicle, it looks like, and taking that into the second one, Aftermath, and really kind of using my own tools for myself, as well as learning from, other storytellers and from the players that I've had so far, and continuing to play, that I will only continue to get better at this.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Doing it. And so, having completed a Chronicle that's a year and 3 months, I think? 2 months?
Yeah.
Something like that, because we started in October last year, I believe.
So it'd be a year and 2 months.
Year and 2 months for this.
I mean,
for this Chronicle.
Hot damn.
Hot damn.
Honestly, the one thing that I took away most from that, aside just the things that I was figuring out due to this being the first game that I myself was actually playing in.
Right.
I think the thing that I learned specifically from Urian is, and it's helped me so much as an ST, especially for Brisbane, is what are the different forms a chessboard can take? The chessboard of a city, of the political climate.
Right.
How many different forms can that take? And and pairing that with my own research, what are some of the paths a little bit less traveled?
And that's ultimately where you're going to find most neonates have some degree of powerful. Your most powerful neonate typically in a city doesn't have full access to the city council, but they might, for instance, have some sway in unions, for instance. So their power is kind of merged and
very
as
localized.
A portion of somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's where the hard part comes in. And the biggest thing with San Antonio, and this was a failing of Detroit's Anarch movement as well, is because one baron of an entire city has a very hard time not becoming the totalitarian Camarilla style they're trying to avoid. Having multiple barons makes it a little bit easier. There's always a contesting portion.
Right.
But because of that, the power isn't all together.
It isn't evenly distributed.
So it can be very easily divided and conquered.
Yeah.
And
if all the barons don't agree, it's very easy. It's very easy to divide and conquer the power. Well, I mean, that is what happened in Detroit, pretty much, right?
Kind of is, a little bit.
In Motor City, at the very least.
In Motor City, it was definitely a Second Inquisition story, mostly, and that's what happened to the city.
Yeah.
And I, with Derek and with McFluffy Muffin and with the Spectre at first, early on, we decided that the Camarilla were going to be the primary antagonist for this story, and anything else that came up was going to be, side plots or whatever. Those things happen, but the primary antagonist was going to be the Camarilla. How big? I didn't know, but I found out very quickly.
Spectre ended up saying something that was kind of interesting. I took a lot of politics from it. There was one thing you mentioned with roleplay. I tried to arrange it for as few roles as possible.
Right.
That was a game changer for me. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that, Spectre? Kind of curious. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just kind of curious on that. That's the thing that I enjoy. It's that kernel of Urian, or that kernel in me that makes Urian, is I enjoy teaching and I enjoy seeing people grow.
Oh yeah,
So
Derek as a
Urian is just me
player is an
taking that
educator.
to a monster,
Right.
right? That's just me taking it to this small aspect of myself and making it monstrous.
Right. And I love Urian for it. I also I also ship Urian and M, not gonna lie.
I find it funny more than anything.
It's a storyteller ship, it's fine.
I find it still to this day amusing that you got this 5 foot nothing bald or blonde bowl cut hair, short stack that is probably barely 120 pounds soaking wet.
Oh, he's a
It's
small
like,
boy.
really?
Yeah.
This is the War Baron?
He's an itty bitty boy.
Like, this is who I'm supposed to be afraid of?
5'4". That's what he is.
Yeah.
5'4",
Yeah.
blonde. Looks like a child. Unless he's giving you a death glare, and then you're like,
Yeah. And I think it comes down to Urian's voice. I'll
Yeah.
be honest.
yeah.
And especially in your style, right? It's hard not
Yeah.
to end up seeing him as, the good boy, who just might be a little edgy. But I love Urian's voice and his tone because there's just that cadence. There's something to it where it's that little bit of intensity, and regardless of his stature, physically, when you're around him, and I feel it when I'm playing him, like he just feels larger than life.
Yeah.
Like I am in the presence of a giant.
Because if you would have come in with a big old Jackson, Mississippi accent going in there, nobody take it seriously.
Maybe. But I think I think it is that strangeness of an accent.
His
Is Urian a wee bit Riku from Kingdom Hearts? Actually, I've never played Kingdom Hearts, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't know Riku.
Riku from Kingdom Hearts is in the first game is the manipulated, not the manipulator. And so, Riku from Kingdom Hearts doesn't do the big brain plays like Urian does. Your big brain plays would be Maleficent from Kingdom Hearts. But Maleficent is also the antagonist in that game, so...
I think, if anything, Urian at his worst was a lot like Rui from Demon Slayer.
I have not seen that, so...
It's okay. Just this very... he claims everyone around him, makes them part of this family, and starts to end up... And despite the fact that he's a short stack, when you see what he's capable of...
His actions speak louder than words, yeah.
Yeah, but even when he's trying to be sweet, or if he's trying to be kind, there's something horrifically insidious about it, even when there's no intent for it.
I feel like some really good examples of that are some of the times where he was basically telling Velda off. Like, he was trying to guide her, but it came across very judgmental and didn't sit right.
But that could be his inner prince talking.
Yeah.
Where he kind of has to, in his own head, come from a place of authority. And is, even to this day, coming to grips with the fact that anarchs all treat each other like they're equals, or at least try to, at least pretend like they do, and thus coming at it from that angle after having spent centuries as a man in charge, going from whatever he was doing in Europe to going to Jackson and taking it as prince, and then his downfall. And so that's Marius Calhoun's predicament. Is he's a man of authority, but he can't exercise his authority like he wants to. So what does he do? He goes to the eldest person in the city and figures out, kind of from Lucio de la Rosa, that it's not about overtly manipulating people, it's about nudging them in the right direction when it comes to anarchs. Because maybe they'll bite, maybe they won't. You just see what happens and roll with the punches. And I love Lucio. Lucio's a good character. That's another of my favorite
Lucio
NPCs.
is great.
I love. No, you want to know what? De La Rosa was one of the characters. Honestly, I don't know what it is about when you play him or what his cadence is. While he does kind of have the laissez-faire attitude,
Yeah.
it doesn't come across as snobbish. It comes across as, I have so much knowledge and control over this situation. You are so far out of your depth that at this point, this conversation serves nothing more than the entertaining me. There is something about it where he, and tell me, did you guys get this from him too? He just felt like the oldest person here, like older than Urian.
Yeah, he felt like he had control of every situation that he was in, which was really impressive, actually.
Yeah. And
Like
I like
in the
to think
room,
that
and you might not have noticed him standing in the corner of the room, but when he made his presence known, you noticed.
I like to think that even though I can't do voices very well, as far as distinguishing voices, that mannerisms kind of speak to the different characters, and that they were portrayed well in that regard. I like to think that I'm okay at that. Stick a bunch of my NPCs in the same room and you'll get confused as to who's talking because I don't change voices. But I try to make it pretty clear what their vocal patterns are like.
You tend to change mannerisms rather than actual voices.
Rather than voice. And so, kind of do that. I don't do accents very well, so the closest thing that I came to an accent was being a little bit more snobbish with like Ashley, and then giving a bit of a nasally cadence to De La Rosa and
Dren. You say that you can't do an accent, but you're forgetting
Dren.
Oh yeah, Dren. Dren was there for a moment.
Dren.
Yeah.
Poor Dren.
Dren got the short end of the stick.
Fun fact, he got Diablerized.
Yeah, he fucking did.
He did. John did it.
I thought that was the case.
Yeah.
John Diablerized him. Yep.
There's one thing. Just because this came up. Just Blue Cloud. Urian Doyle proper is a fledgling.
Yes.
The problem is that Urian Doyle diablerized a elder and failed. So you got an elder
700-some-year-old elder.
Yeah. Running around
Middle
with the
ages
brain
elder.
meat of a fledgling.
He's still learning how to navigate that, really.
He is. But there was another thing. What caused Calhoun to eventually turn Anarch, other than waking up in the Anarch's body and a very unlikely chance somebody would believe him? What was the turning point? It wasn't a turning point. It was a slow corruption. It was a slow corruption of who he was. Because at first, his whole reason for coming to San Antonio was he was going to do exactly what Kyle Calhoun was doing. He was going to turn the city Camarilla.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you take a closer look at how he's establishing things, it's always in this pseudo-Camarilla-like manner, with himself at the top. He was trying to play the long game to the point where he could play Praxis. Unfortunately, when the Camarilla, when his own great-grandchild was coming into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last of his lineage. He can't let it die. He's still a Ventrue at heart. So, in order to do so, in order to spare himself in that regard, because he can't sire any more Childer as Ventrue anymore.
Yeah.
Kyle's the last he's got.
Yeah.
So he's got to find a way to save it. And in doing so, he's come to a point where his power and his influence that he built up as an anarch, trying to get a chance to flip the tables, gave way to something that was much more important to him. And that's...
Kyle was more important to him than his ambition.
Yeah, Kyle was more important, M was more important. He would be reluctant to say it, but Amber, Velda, Benji was more important.
Carlos and Doc.
Carlos, Doc, and Alfonso, these are his Childer. Like, when he teaches somebody, he very much views them as Childer.
As their kid,
but because,
as his kids. Yep.
But because he's responsible for them, because he's their mentor...
He also has to play parent.
He has to play parent, and in doing so, it kind of turned him in that regard. So it wasn't one big decision. It was, the deeper he got in, the harder it was to stand with the Camarilla.
Because before Em and Wolf came into the picture, Urian was mostly living by himself. He didn't have a coterie before that, and he had been in San Antonio for a couple of years. And when they came into the picture, that's when things really started to develop into a story for Urian. Because before that, he had his ambitions, but he didn't really act on them much before that. And so, yeah, and then Amber and Velda come into the picture, and then Violet for a little while, and Benji, and just everyone else involved in this whole thing just slowly made him think that, no, my city's about my people, not about, what sect I belong to. These are my people, whatever they call themselves.
Which I think was a really nice sort of development for Urian.
Mm-hmm.
Just that slow change over time. And the mental anguish that he went through coming to terms with that was also really interesting.
Em did tell him that it was a crown and a sword thrown into the forge, and he can't separate them anymore, so what do you make with it?
Yeah, well, it's what Amber said to him as well. Both Marius Calhoun and Urian Doyle died that night in Jackson. A prince who was considered a tyrant, and his would-be Diablerist who bit off way more than he could chew. And what came out on the other side of that unholy union was neither prince nor Diablerist, but something far, far in between. And altogether different.
Yep.
I did notice you kept that melting pot as a theme throughout the story.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that last conversation with Velda and M.
I like callbacks.
It was nice.
I like callbacks.
I had to stop myself from saying like stealing gold because she wouldn't know that.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep.
Blue Cloud asked, Derek, if you could cast the characters of this Chronicle in live action, who do you reckon could play them?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a thing.
If I had to guess, that's a tough one.
That's a very tough question.
That's a very tough one.
I'm trying to think. Give me a minute on that, because my default would be Robert Hoffman.
Robert
But
Hoffman.
I think he's a little too tall.
There'd
But
be some camera work manipulating going on with that one.
I liked his work in Shrooms. It's a terrible movie, but I liked his work. And
I don't even know what that person looks like.
Uh,
But that's a thought, you know, because that may or may not go into tokens for next Chronicle. Because I might be switching tokens up for the cast that was player characters for this session, this Chronicle, into more photographic NPC code tokens.
Yeah. So, like, because Velda came from a different place, she actually already had a face claim. And that face claim would be Wyona Hayashi, who is actually an Instagram model, I'm pretty sure. She's freaking gorgeous.
Oh yeah. I'm definitely using a picture of her from your pinboard to
Yeah.
to do
Velda has
to
a
do Velda
very
next
extensive pinboard.
Yeah, Velda is gonna be using her face claim for her token for next Chronicle.
Yes.
Um,
Who would play Amber?
Spectre, who would play Benji?
That's a good question. Amber and Benji would be hard to cast, I think.
Benji's kind of a big dude, a big kind of dark skinned dude with a crooked nose. Kind of got that, biker punk aesthetic.
Yeah.
So, not super muscly, like MMA muscle, like not quite like heavyweight, but like a little swole.
Amber as Dakota Fanning as Amber. Oh, that is difficult. I'll actually have to see what she looks like now because I haven't seen her in anything in ages.
Shadow, you are very right. She also kind of reminds me of Mazakine in terms of facial structure.
To be fair, a lot of the the NPCs were just, people I found on Google Images. It's likely that maybe one or two of these had like face claims that are actually famous. I think Jameson is Ben Affleck's picture, if I remember right.
Whatever works, eh?
Hey.
Yes, we're talking about Maze from Lucifer.
Oh, okay. 1 second. That's the lasagna in the oven.
But yeah. Anything coming to mind for you, Derek, or no? Not really.
Like I said, Robert Hoffman would have been the first thought, but I think he's a little too tall. Actually, you know who would be perfect for it? Just looking over it.
Yeah.
Uriah Shelton.
Who?
So if you've seen Lifted or Blue,
neither of those.
Okay, I'm gonna show you a picture of this kid.
Okay. Yes, please do.
You gotta remember, right? The whole point is that
Urian's unassuming.
You shouldn't be able to take him seriously.
Right. You should be unassuming.
Like, that's the point.
Entirely.
So this kid just looks dorky enough that I think he can pull it off.
Yes. That's
all
delightful.
powerful. You're stuck in the body of a nerd, kid.
That's beautiful.
I don't know who is in the picture that I used for Marius Calhoun, but that is absolutely the person I would cast as Marius Calhoun. Because...
Hey, Spectre, does it have to be a Latino actor, or could it be a black actor?
I'm just asking who could do the job.
Who would? Yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
Because
A strong-jawed person, definitely. It's got a real chiseled jaw on that guy, with a big old bulbous chin. On Benji, he kind of has a bulbous chin and a strong jaw, and so but yeah, this has been an absolutely fun Chronicle to do, and I love all of you for having been on this journey with me and creating this journey with me, because every bit of everything in this is because of you guys. Every NPC exists because of you guys.
Coffee, you're gonna make me cry again.
It's true though. It's very true because you guys wanted to go on this journey, and here we are.
Thank you for inviting me on this journey.
Of course. You
Because
you absolutely always have a seat at my table. That's one of the things is once you're invited, you can come at any time, anywhere. Whatever I'm storytelling, you're invited.
I love you. I love you all so much.
I love you too, Moxie.
I am back from pulling the lasagna out of the oven.
You didn't die? Good.
Or is
honestly,
Hmm.
when I was thinking, like, let him just grow his hair out a bit. But I was thinking about Tristan Wilds as Marius.
Ooh.
Because just the look he gives, that's Urian's look. Like, I imagine that is Urian's. That is the face, like, or the expression, the attitude of Urian Doyle. Or,
Oh, yeah.
Not Marius Calhoun.
Marius Calhoun.
Right?
Marius
and now take
is...
that person and shove him in that kid's body.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you have a man who basically doesn't fit in his britches. Because he's used to standing taller, quite literally, than he is.
Shadow sees it now when I ended up saying, like, Tobin Bell was the original inspiration for John. And that's actually where he gets his name.
Yep.
If you think
John
about
Bell.
it, right?
Yep, John Bell. And I love John. John was a good character. John was a good dude.
I'm just
And
screaming, I knew it.
The aha moments that were coming from all of you.
Spectre said that their original aesthetic inspiration was Dante Bosco.
Dante Rufio.
Rufio.
Dante Bosco.
Oh,
Dante Bosco would absolutely, if he was swole, he would absolutely make a perfect Benji.
Beautiful.
I'm now just traveling back to a time on the internet that I regret. That goddamn webcomic ruined my life, man. You have no idea.
The internet says you're welcome. I don't know what that's for, but you're welcome. Who is Marius again? Marius is the diablerized prince that resides within Urian Doyle's head.
Yeah, so when you were talking, the person you've been following goes under the name Urian Doyle because that's what everybody associates with the face, but the personality, the person you've been following, is actually Prince Marius Calhoun of Clan Ventru from Jackson. And that's who's they've been playing. So this entire chronicle has basically followed this elder hiding amongst neonates. Because after their diablerie, they're stuck in this body. They're stuck with these abilities. They don't have what they used to. Now they have to adapt.
Yep.
So the person, yeah, you just moved it right there.
Yeah.
Marius Calhoun and Urian, same person.
Shadow asks me, is the La Sombra okay? Did they get out of the oven okay? If you're talking about John, no.
No.
If you're talking about a La Sombra from Brisbane, one Valentina Valcoste, also no.
Mm.
I swear to God.
Man, the
look over
Lasombras in our game have a bad run.
Yeah. Well, justifiably so, fucking traitors. But that's beside the point. The beast take on the voice of kindred that you've diablerized. So here's the thing about the beast. The beast is ultimately an impulse.
Yep.
That's what it is. When me, CoffeeCat, or anybody else starts talking as your beast, what it really is here's an impulse that you're feeling at that exact moment, and that internal conflict. And when we have those little back and forths, that's just the internal conflict that's going on.
Every person in the world has those internal monologues that you have about, the random things that you think, and most of us are raised to ignore some of our baser impulses and get on with our day because we can stamp that down without any hesitation and any trouble. The only problem with these impulses in a vampire is that they actually have the ability to override your will sometimes, in that these baser impulses really just come to the surface a lot. And so when you're in a position where you're compromised as far as your own personal willpower, and the bestial impulses start really rattling your brain, you have nothing left in you really to fight against them, and so your baser impulses come out because you're a monster. And so in the case of Urian, his beast took on the voice of the original Urian Doyle, in that this was always going to be a thought in Marius Calhoun's head about that person, and thus it kind of personified itself in that way, where the person who is there may not even be Urian Doyle. Then he's probably nowhere in existence anymore. Because, the beast is ballsier than Urian ever was, the original Urian. And so...
Oh yeah, the original Urian was a goddamn coward.
The pansy, yeah.
Well, not only was he was an opportunist.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah.
So when that happened, he just... When you have what was it, like 6 different anarchs all feeding on the prince, he just happened to get the last sip. Yeah. That's all it was.
He got the last one. And so that's where Urian Doyle as a person then began to degrade, and Marius Calhoun took over.
Yeah.
And thus we have the diablerized prince. But Galvin and Kyle also brought up a good point of, well, it is entirely possible that you're just the embodiment of memories and have gone mad. But, Galvin's willing to entertain that idea right now because it means that he gets to interact with the memories of Marius Calhoun again. At the very least. And so he's willing to entertain that idea now, whether it's delusional or not.
I still feel so bad for trying to diablerize him.
Yeah.
But that was a harsh scene.
It was so good,
very
though.
harsh.
It was so good, though.
I will definitely say that it was a very harsh scene.
You all love that I make you cry. I intend to do it even more.
I do.
You guys keep coming back for more. It's like you're sadists for my tragedy. And that's the kind of story that I do. I'm not really a horror channel. I'm more of a tragedy channel when it comes to vampire. The
Everybody got a
tragedy
flavor.
of
But we love you.
the tragedy of
Yeah.
vampiric existence. It's my shtick. I mean, it can be horrific because I don't expect it not to be, but you know, the creep element isn't necessarily where I do a lot of my strengths. My strength is, you know, personal stories, tragedy, making you cry because you have to drive your car into your touchstone's house.
Yep. Yeah.
Just
Thank you for
shoving.
that, by the way.
You're welcome. Just twisting that dagger even more. I'm gonna keep doing it. Keep doing it. I'm gonna keep doing it, lethality.
Yeah, I bet you bet you will.
And fun fact, most of you have already created 3 people in total that I can manipulate you with. And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, in one of the characters' cases, there may also be, you know, husbands and wives also that interact with said people that you have created. And thus
Well,
Wonderful.
have influenced the creation of other people in the world already.
But
That may not
it.
be
Yeah.
directly
Yeah.
involved with you, but
I'm
By
pulling
proxy.
from 2 different songs right now when it comes down to my current character. Though I find it funny because apparently Black Wolf really doesn't like the inspiration.
mm,
Mm.
the inspiration for the new character, like where
Yeah.
the song that comes from.
Yeah.
I like that song
So-
though.
Yeah, that one and Welcome to the Family by Daddy Fat Snaps. So
That
those are
one
the
I
2
haven't.
songs.
I don't know that I've heard very much.
That's funny,
Um,
Shadow.
Yes.
But-
I'm excited to play Aftermath as well, Spectre. Aftermath will be airing session 0 likely. What is today?
Oh, I got
Um,
timed out.
you need to actually ask for me permission before you do links, my friendo.
Yeah, it's okay.
or
We
it-
got a mod in here who can find it.
That's true. The 6th, I believe, is when we'll be back with session 0 if we want to do that live.
Yep,
I
that
do.
would be the.
I do.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah,
well,
then we'll do the
7th
live session 0 for Aftermath
Yeah.
at our usual time next Wednesday. But we do need to actually call it a night because it is getting late and it is 2 a.m. and I really need to kind of wind down and get some food and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you all so much for the for everything, for being my cast members, for putting up with my shenanigans in game and giving me so many daggers to stab you with and make you cry. And I absolutely look forward to more of this. Anyone who wants to interact more and do more questions about San Antonio, please feel free to post them in our general chat on Discord. And to the best of my ability, without spoiling anything, I will do what I can to answer them. And you all are super free to interact on Discord all you like. And so there's also the VOD list. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube because I post the VODs for San Antonio the next day after airing them on Twitch. And so yeah. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this ride. It's been wild.
So, just to end up helping out here, CoffeeCat, I'm gonna be hanging in his Discord for probably the next hour, hour and a half. So, if you want to end up coming in and just chew the fat with some of the cast, by all means.
Yes, I do have a
might
joint
be going
voice
to
chat.
sleep,
Yep, I'm going to
but
sleep.
not. And usually I do this for my own crew, but this time I'm going to be hanging out specifically in CoffeeCat's general. So.
Yes. And subscribe on YouTube because when we hit 100 subscribers, we get a vanity URL. So please promote the channel.
Yeah.
It's a good watch. I binge my own content.
That reminds me, I've got some uploading to do.
I gotta organize the playlist now.
Yes.
Also, Mox's phone died.
Uh,
So,
love you, Mox.
but she loves you all.
I love you all. I love you so much.
Tell that bitch to
And,
go to hell.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
I'm sure that we can't wait to offer you a second Chronicle filled with some interesting characters.
Yes, session 0 for San Antonio by Night Aftermath will air on the 6th at our usual time of 10 p.m. Central. So until
Yeah.
then, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night,
Good-
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
I love you.
Bye.